Hello, everybody, and welcome to Beyond the Wind, the podcast about the Kingkiller Chronicles written by Patrick Rothfuss. I am Leonard and I'm accompanied by my friend Marcy. Together, we discuss one chapter or a few chapters depending on the length every week. Hey, Marcy, how are you?
I'm doing very good. We finally have Christmas holidays here and just finished my last week of work. And I'm very happy to start the holidays talking about the Kingkiller Chronicles again. How are you?
Yeah, same. I'm also in exactly in the same situation, and I am very excited about today's chapter.
Yes, today we will go through chapter 26, Lan Returned. And this is a chapter which delivers a lot of theories, a lot of history, some stuff that we already have gotten some information from, some aspects which we will get more information from. So this is really a packed story here.
Yeah, and also that's the biggest turning point of the book where the lowest point of Kvothe is already reached and from now on it only goes up.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so we have a lot ahead of us. So should we just start with chapter 26?
Sure.
So, chapter 26, Lan Return. So, in this chapter, Kvothe visits the storyteller Skarpi in a tavern in Tabin, and Skarpi tells the story of Lanre, one of the greatest men who lived in a time where there were a lot of wars. And in the end of the story, Lan returned, as the chapter implies, and becomes one of the probably greatest villains of this world. And this story is, as you said, one of the awakenings for Kvothe to come back with his memories of the past.
hmm
So, what was your first impression of this chapter?
The first thing that's mentioned in the chapter is that there's already three birthday that is spent in Tarbian, so it must be about 3 years that he's there. And I've asked myself, maybe if it's 3 years at the same place, can it be that some other Edemaru troop would have come in Tarbin, maybe would have seen other Edemaru people? Do you think it's a possibility? Do you think it happened?
It probably happened, yeah. I mean, it is oftentimes described how big Tabin is. So, I'm pretty sure that some Idimaru have been traveling to Tabien, but at the same time, because the city is so big, it makes it less likely that Kvothe is at the same time in the same place as these troops, maybe. So you were wondering if he has confronted some of these, right?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe he met someone, then told what happened to the troop. Maybe they ask what happened to the troop. Maybe there's some kind of knowledge that he can give or he can get from the brotherhood of the Demaru.
Yeah, I think probably if he wanted to, then I think that yeah, he would found some troops. But maybe this is also just too close to home for him, and
hmm
he maybe avoided to look for a Dimaru.
Yeah, I think that's the most probable, because I think if the Edemaru is coming, I'm pretty sure there is like some kind of announcement, and you know where you have to be at what time in order to know to see them, and I guess the only way to see them is to go to them actively, and it's easy to avoid too.
Yes. But I could imagine that also the Idimaru are not too happy to visit Tabin because I imagine that they are very different. Like Idimaru are this nomadic folks that travel from town to town, and Tabin might seem to be a bit too big, maybe. I don't know.
hmm Do you think the troop was on the way to Tarbin when they got killed?
Mm, no, I don't think so. Do you think that?
I mean, they must have been in the right direction, probably. Maybe not. Maybe they have, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it
It could
is
have been.
it is a possibility. Yeah.
hmm
Okay, so this chapter kind of divides in two halves. The first half describes some of his life in Tabin, and we get some more of Pike. So
hmm
the rival of Kvothe during this time in Tarbin, and it's kind of a gruesome story what happens here, right?
Yes, I've been asking myself, what's the point of so much telling of the Pike story? And I have been thinking of an answer. I think maybe it's for us to see how revengeful Quills is. And maybe that's his weakest point. I mean, for every great character, there got to be a great weakness, and maybe it's, in my opinion, the big weakness that Quills is revengeful and doesn't know how to stop. Do you think so too?
Um, I don't think that I didn't have this feeling of revenge here so much, but maybe you can explain why you had this feeling of revenge here.
So at some point, he follows Pike, and he follows it long enough to find where the safe place from Pike is, and it burns it down.
Yes, exactly. So this is probably because of Pike destroyed his father's loot, right?
And beat him up.
Yeah, it's true. That maybe, as you said, that there is definitely some revenge here, or the reason is definitely revenge. I could also imagine that he is just a little bit bored, that this is also a reason, and that he has nothing much better to do than to go for this opportunity. But yeah, as you said, this might be a little bit of his flaw that he is revengeful, yeah.
And we will see later the revengefulness that he has with Ambrose is also this biggest problem that he has in the university, right?
It's true. But to be fair,
Sorry.
bless you. To be fair, yes, he is revengeful, but it's also that these guys like Ambrose and Pike, I mean, it's a cheap reason, but they are the ones who started this.
Yeah, that's the kids always say.
Yeah, I mean, Ambrose, he is a kind of a douchebag when he first meets him. And yeah, Pike definitely is also taking opportunity from him right on the gate. And yeah, I think I don't flaw him too much.
Also, it's interesting because even if some people are douchebag, you don't always come on their bad side. For example, most of the time, douchebag are insecure, and when you are starting to trigger the insecurities, then they get really douchey with you, right? And I think Quills has a very, a very, I can't say bad, social tact that it triggers the insecurity of people. And so Ambrose, who could have been a douchebag with other people, is so triggered by Quoth. And I think the first time they meet, Fella is around, and maybe Quoth is a bit too playful with Fella, and Ambrose feel insecure, and then it gets all the anger directed at him. So maybe it's not only that he's revengeful, but also that he's a bit lacking the social cues that people are insecure or something.
Yeah, and he's definitely not afraid of confronting people and have these discussions and this revengeful or this rivalry between one another. And one thing that you said I think is funny because of the insecurities. We also see here that Pike has some soft spot because it is described that he has a box with some stuff in it, and it's definitely not stuff that you would assume that somebody like Pike, as we know him, we don't know much about him, but still, that he would have these things because in the box there was a bundle of dried violets tied with a white ribbon, a toy horse that had lost most of its string mane, and a lock of curling blonde hair. So it seems like, yeah, he has maybe some toy from his childhood. These dried violets, I don't know where they come from, and a lock of curling blonde hair. Maybe, yeah, maybe he is in love or was in love with someone. So, what do you thought about these things?
I think it makes sense that he has a soft spot. I think everyone has some kind of soft spot, and it makes sense that we only know Pike as a bully, but also we know that in opposite to Kvothe, Pike has friends in Tarbean. So maybe that shows that he also can do a lot of good things.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, one other thing. Right at the start of the chapter, Quoth said that he had become an accomplished beggar and thief. So last week I said that I was I was thinking that he should be better off, like he should be a better beggar and one of the best. And we see now that after 3 years he might get a little bit back to his consciousness, and he starts to see himself as well as accomplished, and this is maybe the start of it.
Mm-hmm.
And one other thing, you said that we see Quoth's bad side maybe a little bit with the revenge part, but we also see again some good part of Quoth, because Quoth hears about this storyteller and he imagined what he could do with one talent, because there is this rumor that if you tell him a story that he doesn't know, he gives you a silver talent. And he imagined, what stuff could I do? And he said, I could buy shoes and maybe a knife and give money to trappers. So I think it's really nice of him that one of the first few things that he think of is that he could finally give some money to trappers. And yeah, I think this is also one of the good parts of Kvothe that are showing that he is caring for the people that he likes.
Mm-hmm. But also, we don't know why he is buying a knife. So maybe he also wants to stab Pike with it.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that I try to see the good in Kvothe, but yeah, you find something that that makes you maybe a little bit of a more
yeah. But I think everyone had their good and bad sides, and maybe the knife is also a very good reason.
Sure, no, the knife is definitely to defend himself, and yeah, if it comes to worth, then to injure somebody. But yeah, I think it's just we see that he is an emotional guy for the people that he likes. We see it later with Danner.
Mm-hmm.
We see it now with Trappist, and also for Pike, we see it. He has emotions with Pike, and he acts on these emotions towards people. If he doesn't like someone, then he acts on it, and if he likes someone, then he also acts on it.
Mm-hmm. After there's the story with Pike, is back at home and is thinking about going to Skarpi and getting told a story, and it starts to think about his father, because the father was the one talking about Lanre and telling stories in general. And he says, I was surprised to find these memories held only a gentle age, not the deep pain I expected. And for me, that's a very interesting point to see that time has healed him. So the processing have been done for a big part in the background. Also, I am very surprised at how much the processing has worked without him thinking about it. But I guess you can be surprised what the brain can do in the background, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see that he gets finally a little bit better. But as you said, it's interesting how he accomplished it and what really went through his head over the last 3 years. But yeah, as you said, he finally gets a little bit better. One thing before we head to Skarpi and the story of Lanre, he did some cruel stuff to Pike. So Pike saw that he was burning his home or his shelter and swore that he would kill him. And Kvothe said simply he believed him. He believed that he will kill him. So what he planned to do is maybe to kill him first. And yeah, he lured him in an alley, put some oil over him, and burned him. And he hasn't seen him since. It's described as if he is still alive, or that Kvothe at least thinks that he's still alive. But yeah, maybe he isn't. I mean, he got poured with oil and burned, so I don't know.
Yeah, I assume it was not a big deal because he says, full of the pure hard hatred of a child, I hoped he would burst into a pillar of flame. He didn't, but did catch fire. So the way it tells it, maybe it looked very unimpressive. And Sure, burning is a big deal, but you can also heal pretty good from burn.
That's true. Okay, yeah, now I think I'm ready to head through to Skarpi's story.
Yeah, and the transition is funny because it says everything urged me to stay where I was safe, and the next sentence is the first thing I saw on entering the half-mat was Skarpi.
Yeah, it's true. So just for the listeners to remind them, Skarpi, it was said that he is in a bar where, in an area where Pike is usually around. So Kvothe was afraid to maybe go there or not to go there. And yeah, as you said, he did. And he met Skarpi.
Yeah, I enjoy this kind of humor, and also that it helps us to understand how naturally it was to think that Quoth would be interested in this, and it wouldn't resist the temptation.
Mm. Yeah, because he is an Idimaru, and they are known for his stories. And it is said in the beginning of the chapter that this person ought to know every story. And I think we got a similar description. I don't know if we already got it or later in the series. We get it that also the Idimaru, they know every story. So there is definitely a connection between those two.
Mm-hmm. I am pretty sure you will be interested in talking about the description of Skarpi.
I don't know. I don't have any highlighted about his description.
Okay. Most of the time you're interested about the description of the people, so I was thinking you will be this time.
No, I don't. Do you have anything about how he looked like?
Actually not, but I was just awaiting.
No. I mean, he is described as some old man and like a scarecrow, maybe, or something. Like, yeah, it would scarecrow. So rather thin. But no, nothing there which I can comment or make a theory out of.
Okay. Also good.
Yeah. Okay, let's head to how the story starts. So the kids are trying to make suggestions which story he should tell. And one of the suggestions is Oren Belsitter. Do you remember Oren Belsitter?
I don't.
Yeah, we already read about him. I mean, now we are getting in this book to some part where we need to remember stuff that we already read, and which is already difficult because the series is really big. But yeah, we have heard about him before, and Oren Belsitter is when Kvothe says that he needs 3 days to tell his story. The chronicler was kind of surprised and he didn't think that this was possible, and he said that even Oren Belsitter only took 2 days to tell a story, and he is 80 years old and has 200 years worth of living. So this is where we already hear from him, and he is kind of the famous guy around at this time of Temerant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and one other thing that I found very interesting is that, and I like how it was let in, because it's kind of sad now that Skarpi will tell the story of Lanre, but then there's one girl and she said, I want to hear about the drylands over the storm wall. And I like very much how it is put here, because it's realistic, right? Because there are a bunch of children, and of course, she's not happy with the decision of Lanre, and she said, I want that. But I found it very interesting because we were discussing this. What is east of the storm wall, so of the mountainside? Because Kvothe was wondering how the Skrael got so far in the west, and we believe that he is in Winters now, that his tavern is in Winters. And we said that, okay, if he is wondering why the Skrael are so far west, then he must have been east from them. They must have been east from them, so they must be east of the stone wall. And this is, the first hint of what is beyond the mountains. Maybe some dry land, a desert, snakes that come out of the ground like sharks, and men who are drinking blood instead of water. And this is very interesting because it might be very well happening that we get to see this in book 3.
Yeah, And also the hint is pretty clear at maybe some place that isn't very much developed like the western part. Maybe like it doesn't sound like there will be big cities and stuff. It's more likely something like sort of desert and little village and stuff like this, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so too.
And also it seems very dangerous.
Yeah, definitely. But I think, yeah, I hope that we will see this in book 3. I don't know if we have time for that because there's so much left to tell. But yeah, I would like to see Kvothe visiting new cultures, like when he was at the Adem. I loved that part of the second book, and maybe make some friends there as well. Okay, should we now head to the story of Lanre?
Yes, at the point where Kvothe tells that they want to hear the story of Lanre, it's pretty clear that Skarpi is also very interested in the story and wants to tell it.
So maybe a quick summary of the Lanre story. I mean, kind of already did it for the chapter, but maybe just a quick summary again. So Lanre is one of the most powerful men, and there is a creation war going on, and there are still 8 cities around at the time, 8 great cities. One of them is Mithrinial, and it seems like they are fighting one war after another, or this big war that will never end. And at some point, Lanre dies, and he is married to his wife Lyra, and she brings him back from the death. So Lyra is a powerful namer, and she calls his name, and somehow he comes back to life. And then later, rumors get around that Lyra became sick, and she actually died. And Lanre, in grief, he visited his friend Salitos, who is like a lord of Mithrinial, and there he somehow managed to bind Salitos, even though Lanre was a great fighter, not a great namer. And yeah, in grief, he destroyed Mithrinial and 6 other cities, and then became Haliax. So he became from one of the greatest men alive, one of the darkest men that's alive. And he said that all good is just
Futile.
yeah, exactly. All good is just futile, and he wants to destroy everything that so that no that everyone is left from the pain that life maybe has. So this is how Lanre turned in the end. And for that, Salitos, who is also a powerful namer, he in the end managed to bind Lanre and somehow make a bane or something, and makes Lanre the Haliax that we know, like with the shadow in his face and his darkness surrounding him. And this is kind of how the story ends, right?
Yes. All right. The first thing that I was thinking about the story is there's told about the Mir Tyrenial, the shining city that sits tall among the tall mountains and is like a gem on the crown of a king. I think maybe you animated this part
Yeah,
on your YouTube channel.
I have not published it on YouTube yet, but
Mm-hmm.
I started animating this part.
Mm-hmm. And also I was thinking like cities in the mountain most of the time is not really prosperous, right? Because they are difficult to access, so they have difficulties to trade and to buy and to sell, and so most of the time they're doing okay, but they're not like prosperous. So I was thinking, what do you think is the reason why Myrtarenia is specifically prosperous?
I think that because the war was going on for so long, that maybe this mountain just made it harder for enemies to go up there. So it just became this area or society where you are a little bit isolated from the war that was going on, and there it's easier to defend. So they lived maybe a little bit more in peace, and thus got just more prosperous than the rest of the world. What was your theory?
Yeah, I, I came to the same conclusion than you. It says that Celitos also can see every enemies from far away, and that makes them safe. So maybe it's more prosperous than the other cities, but it's not especially prosperous.
Yes, maybe. One other thing I would like to mention is that last week we discussed, or we had this story about, 2 weeks ago, we had the story about Encanis and Telu, and we had theories of whether Encanis is Haliax and Telu is maybe Salitos. And here's this line that I would like to read. It's describing Salitos. Such was the power of his sight, that he could read the hearts of men like heavy lettered books. So it's a little bit like Taylor, that he knew how the hearts of men were, and Taylor, of course, damned everyone and said how bad they are. And yeah, just wanted to show that there's also, again, this connection here.
Yeah, that's true.
And maybe one other thing to set the story in line with, to have a reference and timeline. So we are talking about the creation war, and we will talk about this in the future as well. But the creation war, I think the Kvothe said that Haliax is about 5,000 years old. So this might be happening 5,000 years ago. And also, I think it's mentioned that the creation war was started by EX, who stole the moon and brought it to the Feywild. So this is just a reference. So maybe we are about 5,000 years ago of the timeline from today. And yeah, this creation war that is going on now might be in cause of EX.
For the story itself, I think the first thing that we can discuss really is the reviving part, that Lanre dies and gets revived. I think it's uncommon enough to try to understand it. It definitely has to do with names, and we see that Lyra has three kind of calling. The first time in the midst of silence, she commands. One time in the midst of fear, her voice was a beckoning, and one time in the midst of despair, she whispers. And I definitely thought about the silence in three parts. Did you?
No, I didn't thought about this.
I was thinking maybe that's some kind of symbolic, that in order to revive someone, you have to call it in three different ways, in three different circumstances. And I was thinking maybe the three silence at the inn in the beginning is some beginning of reviving of Kvothe. Kvothe is not dead, but his spirit is kind of dead, and so maybe that's the three parts that gets to start to revive him again.
Yeah, I like that. I like the parallel.
How realistic do you think that this story really happened with the reviving?
Good question. I think because in the end we hear that Skarpi himself, he said that the story happened more or less, because you have to put in some lies, or maybe to make a story better, or otherwise you don't come sincere. And I think for this part, I'm not sure. I think he actually died, yes. What do you think?
I was thinking that was part of the exaggeration. I think maybe he was only deeply injured, and it seemed like he was about to die, but he didn't really die.
Yeah, it would make sense, because I think in most fantasy, or generally, death is like something very final, which you cannot come back from without a big price, maybe. Or if you bring somebody back, then there's always like their soul is not really, or their soul is messed up, or I don't know, that you yourself have to give another soul to bring back the soul. So it feels always very cheap to just bring somebody back from the death. So yeah, it might be an exaggeration here.
To me, it's really interesting that you mention every time there is some kind of resurrection, there's a big price to it. And that leads me to the next question. afterwards, the rumors began to spread that Lyra was ill, had been kidnapped, had died, had fled, and so on and so on. Do you think that's the price? Do you think Lyra could resurrect Lanre, but did pay some kind of price in her health or mental health or something like this?
That's a good point. I didn't thought about this, that this might be the price for her, that she now gets sicker and sicker. That's a good point. I'm not sure if this is the price. I like the story that she managed to bring him back from the death, and that in this case, or in this fantasy universe, there is not a price like that, or not at least a direct price. So it might be just karma, like karma, that she got dead, but not that is a real payment, that you don't really have to pay something for calling somebody's name and bring him back to life.
Mm-hmm. Also, the way I imagine Telu, if Telu is responsible for this kind of stuff, he would maybe think something like, he will hear Lyra calling for the reviving, and it will think something like, you are not thankful about the life I gave you, and then he will start thinking like, sure, I can resurrect him, but I will make your life hell. And then it starts making both go mad and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This might be. Okay. Yeah, as you said, Lyra got sick. Or actually, we don't know what happened to her. There are rumors that she got sick.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lanre visits Salitos.
I would like to ask, what do you think happened to Lyra?
I honestly don't know. I could probably make up some theory, but for me, I like the story if it's just bad luck. If she just got sick, maybe something like cancer or a disease that just can't be cured. And yeah, I like the simple stuff in this story to be true.
Yeah, it could be.
Do you have a theory what happened to her?
I think the reviving stuff with some kind of consequences is a funny explanation, but sometimes the basic explanation is the best one.
Okay, so when Lanre is next to Salitos, Salitos was wondering how well Lanre is, and he knew that grief can twist a heart and how passions drive good men to folly. And I found it interesting that this word folly is used again, because we know that Ben said to Kvothe that he should be aware of folly. And we also know that Kvothe's father was collecting the story of Lanre, and Ben was discussing the story with them, or at least part of it. And it's interesting that we get to see this story where folly just was for Lanre his doom, or his agony in the end, and that Ben told Kvothe to be aware of that. So it might be foreshadowing that something like this will happen or could happen to Kvothe, and that he decides maybe for good or not for bad. I don't know. What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the first point where you can really see the parallel, at least for me, with what I've read already, that you could see that, Lanre feared for Lyra's health and life, and maybe she died, and he grieved, and he became a bad guy and did bad stuff. And maybe that's the first time you can think Kvothe lived the Lanre life. He maybe had something with Denna died at some point, and Kvothe start doing bad stuff and in grief, and maybe we'll live exactly the same circle.
I also have found, I read now one of my highlights that answers one of your questions. You asked me how I think Lyra died, and we actually did have a comment here. Lanre said, "My wife is dead. Deceit and treachery brought me to it, but her death is on my hands." So it seems like Lanre was betrayed in some way, and this is what brought his wife's death. But yeah, Lanre sees this in his fault. So it might be not a natural cause, right? Which killed Lyra.
Yeah, that's true. We a bit overlooked that. What kind of situation do you imagine where deceit and treachery brings Lanre to kill his wife?
I mean, I don't think that he literally killed his wife. I think he
Mhm.
trusted someone and that trust was betrayed. And maybe that person killed Lyra. And I think it's funny because one of the earliest chapters or episodes, we discussed also that Kvothe was, he said that he laughed, I don't remember everything, but then he says also that he was betrayed. He trusted, got betrayed.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember this
Yes.
discussion.
Mhm.
Um, and again, we have this parallel here that, yeah, also Kvothe got betrayed. And I don't know. I don't know what happened, but it seems, yeah, similar to what happened here.
Also, it's really hard to imagine where does the deception and the treachery comes, because both Lanre and Kvothe are not told a lot about trusting people. Most of the time, they're just doing their own stuff and relying on their own competences. So it's really surprising that they trust someone so much that they are getting deceived. And also, I don't know if you remember, but when we talked about it, we imagined that Quoth was getting deceived from Dena herself. And in this parallel, when we think about Lanre, it's do you think it's possible that Lyra deceived Lanre, and that's the reason why Hades is on his hands?
That's a possibility. Yeah, it might be that Lyra betrayed him and maybe he did kill her in the end, but I don't know. I think, yeah, to be betrayed, he had to trust someone else, and we haven't heard of anyone else that could be so much in his trust that he had the feeling to be betrayed. And the same for Quoth. Like you said, he doesn't trust people. I think he does. He does trust a lot of people. So yeah, he does trust himself the most, and he does a lot of things just on his own. But I think he trusts his friends, and I think he trusts also Kilvin, Elodin. So I think, yeah, I think he puts trust into those people. But to have such a big bond that you would say, like, yeah, I was truly deceived and someone betrayed the trust, it might be then still in the end Dana, or in this case, Lyra.
Mm. But also, I feel bad there's so much female character, and the only deception we are going to we're only putting on the only female character there is. So I don't think I'm feeling good about it, but maybe it's the way it was thought.
It's true. Okay, one other thing that I would like to talk about is after he said that my wife is dead and deceit and treachery brought me to it, we later get this sentence: out of love for Lyra, Lanre had sought knowledge where knowledge is better left alone, and gained it at a terrible price. So Selitos is wondering how he got this power, and yeah, then he saw this in Lanre. And do you have any theory what this suggests? Because I have a strong theory about this one.
Okay, so maybe I'll let you go first before before I say what I think.
Yeah, so he had sought out knowledge where knowledge is better left alone. For me, this speaks of the Kvothe, definitely, because the Kvothe is this all-knowing tree, and I don't know, the Kvothe himself said that many people would love the opportunity to talk to him. And also, we have Bast telling that Lanre visited the Kvothe before he turned to Haliax. So I'm pretty sure that this knowledge or this power that Lanre got, because somehow he wasn't a namer at all, and now somehow he got the power to bind one of the most powerful namers, Selitos. Yeah, that he got this somehow from the Kvothe.
And what's the price, do you think? How's the deal works? Do you have an idea for it?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the Kvothe can make people mad, but Selitos here said that he is not mad, he is something worse. And Lanre himself said as well, no, he is not mad, or I am not mad. I do this not out of madness. So madness cannot be the price, right? It's said here multiple times. Even though I feel like very much that Lanre talks like he is mad.
Yeah, is it not the point of madness that you don't think that you're mad?
Yes, and I would agree that if only Lanre said, no, I do this not of madness, then
Mm-hmm.
I would still frown a little bit if he is mad or not. But yeah, Salatos agrees that no, he is not mad. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this seals the deal for me that no, Lanre
Okay.
is conscious. He is not mad.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's some kind of eternal grief.
The price that he paid for this
Yeah.
knowledge?
Yeah, maybe it's something like you will never heal from the grieving from Lyra or something like this. You are condemned to eternal despair.
Well, yeah, this might be, and maybe let's summarize quickly what we know about the Kvothe. I mean, the Kvothe knows everything, and he tries to make the worst outcome of everything. So I think the price maybe that he paid is some information that let Lanre see that he will never be happy. So we know also that the Kvothe does not lie. So maybe the Kvothe just told him that, yeah, he will never be reunited with Lyra and he will never be, I don't know, this or that. So he kind of told him his terrible future. And because of this, Lanre said, okay, if I know now that my eternal life, because he is immortal, will be just just a bad life, then maybe I will spare everyone else from their lives and kill everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So this truth might be the terrible price that he paid.
Mm-hmm. And also what he gets is also unclear because Celito says that he can kill Lanre, but Lanre will return at some point.
Yeah, but I think this comes still from Lyra. I'm not sure about
Oh,
this,
mm-hmm.
but yeah, Lyra brought him back from the death, and I think from that moment on he cannot be killed. I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
where it's said, but I think it's hinted that.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking maybe the knowledge that he got and maybe the what all he can is sounds similar to the naming power that Lyra has. So maybe he found some ways of stealing Lyra's power, and maybe she had to die for it, something like this.
It might be
It, in
that.
this mhm. In this sense, in this case, there is the problem that he sought the power to bring Lyra back to life again, so she was already dead. But maybe he was trying to learn already, and she died. She died, and then he tried to take her power or something like this.
I mean, I think there are two possibilities, or maybe three, from when Lanre visited the Kvothe. So either he tried to visit the Kvothe to gain power and end the war for good, maybe. This might be the first one, and maybe the price that he had to pay for that was that Lyra somehow died. So the Kvothe told him this information, how he, because they said in the end they finally won over the great villain and they trapped him
Mm-hmm.
behind the doors of stone, and I'm sure we will come back to that later. So there
Mm-hmm.
is this enemy that they got victorious over, and yeah, maybe this was the prize that they won because Lanre talked the Kvothe, but the Kvothe told Lanre also something which in the end killed Lara, and this would fit somehow because Lanre put maybe trust into the Kvothe, and yeah, the Kvothe did what the Kvothe does and told the truth and did so that something worse even happened. And so Lara died and Lanre becomes a bad person. So this is
Mm-hmm.
one option. The other option is that Lyra got maybe sick, and to cure her, he tried to talk to the Kvothe.
Mm-hmm.
Or the third option is that Lyra was already dead, and then afterwards he tried to talk to the Kvothe. I think all three are possible.
Mm-hmm. I think to me the last one makes the most sense because he, out of love for Lyra and to bring Lyra back to life again, Lanre had sought knowledge where knowledge is better left alone, and so on and so on. So I think maybe the timeline is relatively explicit that first Lyra dies and then is seeking the knowledge.
Yeah, it's true, but also it could be that she is dying, so she must not be dead. So maybe out of love, it could be that she is dying right now and he tried to cure her. Or
Yeah, it's also possible.
Mhm. So this would make the first option less likely.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, so then Lanre said that he has a new name. Now it's Haliax. Selitos then binds him, and he says that his own name will be turned against him, and that he shall have no peace.
Mhm.
This is kind of what Haliax is now, right?
Yeah, and I think we had a discussion about what are the Chandrian trying to achieve, and maybe that could be an explanation that what the Chandrian, or at least Haliax, is trying to do there. Some kind of nihilist that think that life serves no purpose and we are all only born to die and there's nothing that's worth living in the meantime. So they just think it's best if there is nothing, you can as well put a net to everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very philosophical, right? If
Mm-hmm.
if the pain of living is worth the joy of living, and in this case, Lanre definitely says no, it's not worth it, and rather kill them all.
Mm-hmm. I think the most similar philosophical term for it is nihilism. That you think that nothing, I think it comes from nothing, and it's just what they think of the life. It's nothing.
Mm-hmm. But also the sentence gives us one hint that your own name will be turned against you, that you shall have no peace. So maybe because the Chandrian obviously try to hide some information about them, or they kill people who have information about them. And we also, I think, we made a joke that like every time Haliax's names is said, that he gets like tickled or something. Like every time somebody says his name, that it's just pain for him. And this is a reason why, or they need to destroy all memory or information to finally be in peace. This is some hint that we have here. Like knowing their names gives them no peace.
Mm-hmm. Also, I had a question for you. What do you think is the Aleu? Aleu.
Yeah, good question. I thought that maybe those are angels, and
Mm-hmm.
I think in a few chapters we will read more about angels. Yeah, because for the listeners, here is said that until the Eliu fall nameless from the sky. So this bane is, or this curse is, should last until that. And yeah, maybe the Eliu, I think it makes sense that there are some angels. Or what do you think?
Yeah, that's also what I thought, and I was thinking that maybe that's also what they try to achieve. Maybe when there is nothing left, when everything is into oblivion, then maybe they can rest, and maybe that's only what they are thinking. And we have said that he cannot die, right? And maybe that's the part that's that's problematic to him. He cannot die. He cannot stop the grief. So maybe he needs to end the world to be able to die and
Hmm.
stop the pain.
Yeah, I mean, if we take the story for what it is, then it is said, "This is my doom upon you and all who follow you." So all who follow you will be the Chandrian, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And may it last until the world ends and the Aleo fall nameless from the sky. So this might be their goal, to make them fall from the sky and make the world end. So
Mm.
that finally the curse is lifted.
Yeah, and they are doing a good thing. They want to put an end to suffering. They are the nice guys.
Definitely. Okay, do you have anything else?
I think I'm pretty good on the Lanre story. It was really interesting. I don't have so much left, but I'm sure you maybe have something still.
Yes, I still have some stuff. Okay, so there was a battle, the Black of Drossen Tor, and I found it very interesting. The naming Drossen Tor, first of all, it kind of sounds like German. I don't know if you think that as
Yeah, it
well.
does.
I mean, it's no, I think I looked it up, and Drossen, it's Plattdeutsch. So for the
Mm-hmm.
listeners, it's an old German language. And it means like a little bit like garbage. I don't know, leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
And Tor is a gate in German.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I didn't make any sense of it, but I don't know. It sounds very, very German, but Tor is very similar to door as well. And I think in general, Drossen Tor, I mean, the letters are very similar to doors of stone. I don't know if you had the same connection, but for me, it was. There are so many letters that are just similar or at the same. And I don't know if I want to interpret them more than it is, but I think it's very interesting. And I don't know, we talked about this, or we mentioned this a few times, that Feller has a dream of some black king behind the doors of stone, and this black, again, is here, like Black of Drossentor. I just would like to mention it, and maybe if we get to this dream that Feller has, we will come back to this. But yeah, I just wanted to mention this.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking something else. I was thinking Drosten is when you if you're speaking just like with an accent with where I live, like the people of Brandenburg, they will sing. That's the way they might say draußen, and it would some be like kind of like the outwards door, and it would make sense that the city have like some inwards door and outwards door, that maybe some kind of different entrance if you are like in the inner city or in the outward city. So I was thinking maybe it's the doors that are like the most outwards of the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would make sense. And also for a place, it would make sense to call it like this is the battle of this gate or this door. That yeah, it would make sense.
And also where I imagine to have a battle take place, because you wouldn't want to wait the people to go in the drinnen Tor, so you will make the battle before the Drossen Tor.
Yeah, the outside. Yes. Okay. Other than that, I would like to talk a little bit more about the war. I already mentioned that this creation war was started by EX, and later in book 2, we get from Felurian the information that, or I don't know if it's specifically said, but it's implicated that EX is behind the doors of stone. And here it said that after the battle was finished and the enemy was set beyond the doors of stone, survivors found Lanre's body, blah, blah, blah. So I think this is a war between EX and probably humans. I think Lanre and Lyra Salutos, they are humans, and EX might be a Fae, but I'm not 100% on that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that EX is now behind the Doors of Stone, and this battle is the battle where he is. And we also know that Haliax, the last 3 letters, have EX in them. So I don't know. It's for me, it speaks like a little bit that Lanre sees himself as maybe the descendant of EX, or I don't know, like the next EX. I have read that Hal means in Latin breath, so breath of EX. I don't know what to make out of it, but yeah, there definitely seems to be this connection, and that in this war, EX is not mentioned, but I think it's very likely that EX is the enemy that it's talk about here.
That's not something I have a lot to comment on, obviously, because I am missing some of the knowledge you have. But I find it an interesting theory.
And also, just to set it in the world, it's mentioned that they fought unceasing for 3 days in the light of the sun and for 3 nights unceasing by the light of the moon. And I found it very interesting how Rothfuss said it, because it's not very clear whether we are in the human world or in the Fey world. Because in the Fey world, you don't have day and night. It depends on the place you are. So you can travel to the night place, or you can travel to the twilight place, or you can travel to the day place. And yeah, it said they fought for 3 days in the light of the sun and for 3 nights by the light of the moon. And it's would make, I mean, it's from infrastructure alone, it's easier that it takes place in one place and over 3 days and nights. But as it said, they fought 3 days and then 3 nights. I don't know. It said it could also be in the Fae.
Yeah. It's also possible that battles are moving, right? Most of the time, there's some kind of of place you are fighting for, and when you're starting to lose, you're retreating, and the other one are keeping marching. So it can really make sense.
Yeah, definitely. Then one other quick mention is that we have a description of Lanre's sword, and it's silver. I mean, it's no big mentioning here, but we wanted to look out for all the swords that we see, because we know that Kvothe will have a sword that he calls Folly, and it kind of would make sense to call Lanre's sword Folly, or that the name of Lanre's sword is Folly. And yeah, I think the sword that we are looking for is more gray and dull and not necessarily silver. So maybe we can cancel Lanre's sword out.
Yeah, and also that with the sword, you can think that passions drive good men to folly, and maybe it's the sword is the one that's correct that's corrupting Lanre in some ways. So Lanre is a good man, but he's leading all the way to a sword that gives him strength but corrupt him in the same time.
Yes, definitely. One other thing is, there is this theory that Selitos is actually the Kvothe, and because Selitos, he puts the stone in his eye, and then becomes this even a better seeing man. And this is similar to the Kvothe, right? The Kvothe can see everything and into the future, and Selitos kind of now sees also everything. But I think that there is this, as we said, this sentence where Selitos looks at Lanre and sees that he thought knowledge where knowledge would better be left alone. And I think it's a pretty big argument that Selitos is not the Kvothe. Okay, maybe last thing. Yeah, so one other thing is that Selitos knew 3 people who could match his skill in names. One of them is Lyra, or Lyra. One of them is EX. So this would make sense that this battle goes on for long, because if Lyra and Selitos are one of the most powerful namers, then on the enemy side must also be a powerful namer, right? So EX might be it. And the third name is Aleph. And actually, we heard the name Aleph as well before. I will say the sentence we heard before. In the beginning, as far as I know, the world was spun out of the nameless void by Aleph, who gave everything a name. Or depending on the version of the tale, found the names all things already possessed. So when Kvothe starts his story, to tell his story, he starts with the sentence. So Kvothe himself says that Aleph gave everything a name, or depending on the version of the tale, found the name all things already possessed. And this is very interesting, because I think that Kvothe kind of will find out the truth behind the story and behind Haliax. And I found it interesting that the current Kvothe says that Aleph is the first one. And here in the story, it's described that Aleph is kind of the same level at EX, Lyra, and Selitos.
Which is a big deal for Lyra and Ajax. That means that they could have been also some kind of founding members of the naming. Maybe if they're as good as him, maybe they've been creating him maybe as much as he had.
Yeah, so I think Aleph, as described, might be the creator of this continent. EX is the one who stole the moon, and Selitos and Lyra must have been very, very powerful as well. And also, what I just found funny is that it is said that back in the days there were many namers, or more powerful namers, and I think Elodin just fits a little bit into that, by that he has the skill to, just by looking, knows the names of stuff, and I just like to see Elodin, to compare him to these namers. And I have one other thing, is that so we have 8 cities, 7 great cities, and then Myrtorinial, the greatest of them all. And by the end of this story, Myrtorinial got destroyed, and 6 other cities, but 1 city still remained. And this city is not mentioned afterwards, but it's said that one of these great cities was still there. And I don't know if we know what this great city is in the nowadays. it might be the university or maybe the under thing that's underneath the university, so that there was once a great city and still got destroyed in some other way. But yeah, one city should be still good.
Yeah, maybe that's something to keep in mind if there's more mention of cities that could have been great in the past.
Okay, I think this is it for my for my notes of the story of Lanre. Okay, then after the story of Lanre, Kvothe goes to Skarpi and talks a bit to him and seems really sincere. And then we all again have this mentioning that of the great sand sea over the storm wall. So Skarpi himself said this as well. So yeah, we have the second mentioning that over the storm wall seems to be a desert, and yeah, might be important later.
Yeah, and also Skarpi seems like a really nice guy in this end of the story. Is it doesn't really try to take the money that Kvothe gives him, because it says that it really seems like Kvothe needs the money, and if I understand it right, it doesn't take the money in the end, right?
Yeah, exactly. Also, he is described to have bright eyes, and Kvothe said that they look deep into me as if I were a book that he could read. And I found it interesting that it's described as this, because I think in the next chapter, or maybe the one afterward, Skarpi says Kvothe's name, even though he should not know his name. But maybe this is something for our discussion next or the week afterwards.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting.
Okay, I think that's it for me for this chapter.
Yeah, it was really a big chapter with a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's always nice, but of course today was a lot, and yeah, I think we will be back then next week, right? Okay, with that,
Bye.
bye.